Well, the story of Liberty Baptist Church is an exciting history, a history that spans 185 years. Thousands of people have participated in what God has done through this church. This church has had over 30 pastors, moved 5 different times, and worshiped in various locations, from a crude altar on a front porch to a stained glass sanctuary. Most importantly, lives have been touched, souls saved, charity has been rendered, and love has been expressed. What an exciting history this is. Let me tell you the story of Liberty Baptist Church. Let's start at the beginning.
In 1834, America was a different place. The nation consisted of only 24 states, and all of these were east of the Mississippi River. The westward expansion was underway, but no states had been admitted into the Union. This was a world before electricity, automobiles, even trains had only been invented a few years previously, and the general public doubted their effectiveness. It was in this world that Liberty Baptist Church would be born.
On this site in 1772, a vision was born that led to the formation of Rocks Baptist Church. It was also at this site on August 7th, 1834, that letters of transfer were given to 11 white male, 19 white female, and 9 blacks that led to the formation of Liberty Baptist Church.
Rocks Baptist was not the only church to help in the birth and support the vision of Liberty Baptist.
In 1834, additional members came to the new Liberty Baptist Church from Wolf Creek Baptist Church, now known as New Hope Baptist.
These early days were not flashy. Just a pastor, a small congregation, a front porch, a simple building, and a spirit to worship the Lord was all that was needed for Liberty Baptist Church to begin.
The first church services for Liberty Baptist Church were held in front of a crude altar constructed on the front porch of George Abbott's plantation home.
Without an adequate building, the church showed again that it could exist and thrive. A front porch could serve as a sanctuary. Yet, soon Liberty would need shelter, and the first building would be built.
The first church was a crudely constructed log structure with a lofty pulpit and a very high ceiling and hard to heat. Church services were held here from 1834 until 1855 at Pretlow Springs.
This small congregation in a less than ideal structure would serve the Lord 20 years. This location is now covered over in thick woods near a still visible spring about half a mile from the current Liberty Baptist Church cemetery. This faithful congregation would meet in a small log structure to sing, pray, preach, and minister in a much different Appomattox. While Liberty had very little in these days, the very first gift to international missions would be made in 1849. It would be the women of Liberty that would fuel missions involvement and giving for this new formed church. By 1855, the area would take a shape that would be recognizable to us today. Appomattox County was formed in 1845 with portions coming from Prince Edward, Campbell, Charlotte, Buckingham, and Amherst counties. Appomattox, as we experience it today, was being formed, and the church would want to locate closer to the railroad track.
On ground purchased from George Abbott, the second Liberty Baptist Church was constructed on April 14, 1855. In this building, our first Sunday school was held. It sits where the corner of the cemetery is today.
The religious fervor of conversion had swept through the church. The church was now around 25 years old, and with a desire for deepening discipleship, this church would start a Sunday school program. As the church dug deeper into God and His Word, one of America's greatest crises would befall this small community of Appomattox. On April 1861, the bitter American Civil War began. War raged, soldiers died, America was divided. Ideally, this horrible moment in American history would miss the small town of Appomattox, but that's not the way history would be written.
On April 8, 1865, the Union Army occupied the town. Liberty Baptist Church became a field hospital and a prisoner of war camp for the Union Army, in which 2,500 Confederate prisoners were held for at least 24 hours prior to moving to Farmville.
The church saw the bloodiness and horror of the Civil War right in its very own sanctuary. Union soldiers would use the sanctuary of Liberty Baptist Church as a hospital for wounded soldiers. The pews would be arranged to form beds, and their soldiers facing severe injury and some death would be treated in the sanctuary. While the church saw the horrors of war, it would also be within the providence of God that the bloody Civil War would find its end and America would be reunited right here in Appomattox.
On April 9, 1865, which happened to be Palm Sunday, General Lee determined that he was not able to break the Union line. Therefore, he surrendered to General Grant in the parlor of the McLean House, ending the Civil War.
Liberty would take positive steps in the new America, with racial divisions running high after the conclusion of the Civil War. Liberty would look to the black community, and in a desire for reconciliation and equality, Liberty would bore out a vision and help establish a new church for the black community right here in Appomattox.
In the spirit of emancipation in 1866, Liberty Baptist granted 31 letters of transfer to black members in order that they could form their own black church, Galilee Baptist.
The nation would attempt to enter a time of reunification and healing. This could have been a time for Liberty to stumble. Tensions were strong in the American South, and in this environment, the church could have declined. However, Liberty moved forward in the United States of America. These next 20 years would be a time of growth, and that would require Liberty to build again.
On this site, on the third Sunday of August of 1888, the third house of worship of Liberty Baptist Church was constructed on ground purchased from William H. Abbott. It was a splendid house of worship.
At the close of the 1800s, Appomattox, the community, began to change. The town of Appomattox, as we now know it, and Main Street, as we know it, began to take on a much more recognizable form. Liberty would have to make the difficult decision to leave one property behind to move to another property. The graves at Liberty Cemetery serve almost as a symbol of 75 years of faithfulness at one particular location. But that location would now be a thing of the past as Liberty moved into a new Appomattox and into the 1900s.
In 1898, the church that sat at this location was dismantled and moved to the current site of Liberty Baptist Church. The cost of that move was $1,000.
The fourth sanctuary would sit on the site of our current ministry center. However, this building would soon be inadequate for a growing Liberty. Rooted in a new location, in an old but newly renovated building, the boom of Appomattox would fuel new progress into Liberty Baptist Church. A mere 15 years at their new site, after dismantling and reassembling a new sanctuary, and about the time everyone was settled in, to build was becoming a reality.
A space crisis continued to hamper the church's growth. So in 1915, a vote was taken, and in 1916, a new building was constructed on the corner of Lee Grant Avenue and Church Street.
After 81 years of history and 4 moves, the church was ready to settle in to its fourth sanctuary. However, a mere 15 years into its new sanctuary, the need for more space would become more evident. The building had already been renovated, and additional renovations were not feasible. God would need to send the right people at this moment to pull off a visionary task. God would send 2 people, Pastor C.W. McElroy and Deacon C.W. Hancock, for this moment. These two men, both pastor and deacon, would see the need for a new grand sanctuary. To say that a build at this moment in Liberty's history was unpopular was an understatement. For 1 year, both pastor and deacon would filter the idea for the need to build again. But the visionary and bold move came on July 1915, where Deacon C.W. Hancock, in a Sunday morning worship service, made a motion to build a new sanctuary. He would say that he would be the building superintendent and the purchasing agent. The motion passed, and C.W. Hancock for 1 year guided the process of the building of the new sanctuary, both collecting monetary donations and building donations. In 1 year, the sanctuary was complete, and on day one, it was debt-free, a grand moment in the history of Liberty Baptist Church.
When the angels carry me home, when the angels carry me home, I want to see Jesus first of all, when the angels carry me home.
On July 2nd, 1916, a grand sanctuary in front of which I stand was dedicated. 7 former pastors were present at this site for that dedication service.
With the building of such a great edifice, the congregation would blossom. Soon, even more space would be needed. Worship space was ample, but classroom space was not. So merely 7 years after the dedication of the sanctuary, another task would be undertaken.
As a result of the new sanctuary, the church continued to grow. In 1923, it agreed to build a basement underneath the existing church to hold 2 classrooms, one for beginners and one for the primary.
One of the high points of Liberty Baptist Church had to be 1925. This was a time that preceded a season of vision and sacrifice. The church filled, lives were changed. The sacrifice and vision of the previous generation had made this a great moment. However, America as a nation would soon face another crisis.
Soon the 1930s and the Great Depression would settle in. The church would struggle. The pastor would cut his salary 10%. Members would struggle. It was a difficult time. The church would continue to be faithful in this dark season of American history. As the 1930s came to an end, the church looked to Pastor Dr. M.A. McLean to guide them out. Tragically, Pastor McLean would be killed in a train accident in Appomattox, which would be a further blow to a weathered congregation. Their church would have to test its resolve. By the 1940s, World War II would require that young men from the congregation go and serve their country. Even in this time of great conflict, Liberty pressed on and was faithful to their ministry. As World War II ended and Liberty could get back on their feet, a new vision emerged.
As the church continued to grow, in 1955, a new section of the church was dedicated for Sunday school space. It's this section that I stand in today.
One visionary move quickly led to another, and even more space was needed. In the late 1960s, the church voted to add an additional Sunday school with a 3rd floor. The church also funded a library and preschool. The sanctuary was also extensively modernized. The Liberty Choir was a major highlight of the 1970s and 80s. A youth choir would be formed that would travel and sing. A trip to Poland would be planned, and the choir would share internationally. With buildings built, the church was able to look more outward in ministry. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, the changing dynamics of the Southern Baptist Convention would affect Liberty Baptist Church. The larger Southern Baptist Convention began to move against the tide of increasing liberalism and mainline denominations. This change forced state conventions to either agree with the Southern Baptist Church or distance themselves. The 1990s brought about a unique challenge to Liberty Baptist Church, as the Southern Baptist Convention itself would face a crisis of belief that would affect all churches in Virginia. The Virginia Baptists would split, and Liberty would have to decide which direction to go.
In the larger drama of the Southern Baptist Convention, God would put it in the heart of a former pastor of Liberty Baptist Church to start a new Virginia convention. Dole Chauncey would be responsible for starting the Southern Baptist Conservatives of Virginia. Virginia now has two state conventions, the Southern Baptist Conservatives of Virginia and the Baptist General Association of Virginia. There would be members in Liberty Baptist Church that would have strong ties to this older convention. There would be other members in the church that would feel more doctrinally at home in this new convention. This was a tough time in the life of Liberty Baptist Church where two groups with two different ideas would have a vigorous debate. By the early 2000s, Liberty Baptist would decide to fully align with the Southern Baptist Conservatives of Virginia. After this very difficult season, many wondered, with a diminished Liberty Baptist Church, would they rebound after this contentious time?
Yet, after this season of realignment, church growth transpired. Vitality filled the church again. The church would soon update the sanctuary, which would lead to a complete renovation of the entire facility. 2 morning worship services would be held to accommodate those desiring to attend. The building would soon feel cramped due to the abundance of ministry, and a new vision would begin. In 2014, after 50 years without a building project, the church voted to build the ministry center. This build was completed and dedicated in 2016 and has enhanced the growth and outreach of the church within the community. Liberty Baptist Church moves into the 21st century with hopefulness of what God is still doing here. Liberty Baptist Church has endured through changing landscapes, difficult obstacles, and unique generations. Our prayer is God will continue to guide His church into greater days. How exciting that you get to be a part of this great story.